Learning new English words is exciting, but remembering them for a long time can be challenging. Many learners spend hours memorizing vocabulary lists, only to forget most of the words a few days later. The good news is that modern research in psychology and neuroscience has identified effective learning techniques that can significantly improve memory. Instead of relying on rote memorization, you can use scientific methods that help your brain store and retrieve vocabulary more efficiently. In this lesson, we'll explore evidence-based strategies for remembering new English words and making them part of your active vocabulary. The first and perhaps the most effective technique is spaced repetition. Research shows that reviewing information at increasing intervals helps transfer knowledge from short-term memory to long-term memory. Instead of reviewing a new word 10 times in one day, review it after 1 day, then 3 days later, then a week later, and finally after a month. This method strengthens your memory each time you successfully recall the word. Many language learning apps use spaced repetition because it has been proven to improve long-term retention. Another powerful technique is active recall. Rather than simply rereading a list of vocabulary words, challenge yourself to remember the meaning without looking at your notes. For example, write the word abundant on one side of a flashcard and try to recall its meaning before checking the answer. Active recall forces your brain to retrieve information, making the memory stronger than passive reading. One of the easiest ways to remember vocabulary is through contextual learning. Our brains remember information more effectively when it is connected to meaningful situations. Instead of memorizing the word coherent by itself, use it in a sentence such as, "Her presentation was coherent and easy to understand." Reading books, newspapers, and articles also exposes you to words in context, making them easier to remember. Another scientifically supported method is visual association. The human brain processes images much faster than text. When learning a new word, create a mental picture that represents its meaning. For example, for the word mountainous, imagine a landscape filled with towering mountains. For the word fragile, picture a delicate glass vase that could easily break. These visual images create strong memory connections. The technique known as association is equally effective. Link new words with words you already know. Suppose you learn the word benevolent, meaning kind or generous. You might associate it with a kind teacher or a generous family member. Creating personal connections makes vocabulary more meaningful and therefore easier to remember. Another useful strategy is chunking. Instead of trying to memorize 20 unrelated words, organize them into categories. For example, group words related to emotions, education, travel, technology, or health. Your brain naturally remembers organized information better than random lists. You can also group words by roots, prefixes, or suffixes to recognize patterns in English vocabulary. Writing by hand is another surprisingly effective learning technique. Studies suggest that writing activates multiple areas of the brain involved in learning and memory. Rather than typing every new word, write it in a vocabulary notebook, include its meaning, and create your own sentence. The physical act of writing helps reinforce memory. Teaching someone else is another scientifically proven way to strengthen learning. When you explain the meaning of a word to another person, your brain processes the information more deeply. This technique, often called the protégé effect, helps you identify gaps in your understanding while improving long-term retention. Even if you don't have a study partner, try explaining new words aloud as if you were teaching a class. Another effective approach is storytelling. Instead of memorizing isolated vocabulary, create a short story that includes several new words. For example, you could write a story using the words abundant, serene, authentic, and versatile. Stories provide context, emotion, and sequence, making vocabulary much easier to remember. Sleep also plays a surprisingly important role in vocabulary learning. During sleep, your brain consolidates new memories and strengthens neural connections. Studies show that reviewing vocabulary shortly before bedtime can improve recall the following day. A good night's sleep is therefore an essential part of effective language learning. Regular reading is another scientifically supported strategy. Reading exposes you to repeated encounters with vocabulary in different contexts. Every time you see a word again, your brain strengthens its memory. Reading novels, newspapers, blogs, academic articles, and magazines helps reinforce vocabulary naturally without deliberate memorization. Speaking is equally important. Many learners recognize words while reading but struggle to use them in conversation. To move vocabulary into your active memory, use new words when speaking with friends, teachers, or language partners. Even talking to yourself in English can improve recall because speaking activates different memory pathways than reading alone. Listening also contributes to vocabulary retention. Watching English movies, documentaries, podcasts, news broadcasts, and YouTube lessons allows you to hear pronunciation, stress patterns, and natural usage. Hearing a word repeatedly in authentic situations makes it much easier to remember and use correctly. Another effective technique is maintaining a personal vocabulary journal. Instead of writing only definitions, include synonyms, antonyms, pronunciation, example sentences, and even small drawings. Reviewing this journal regularly provides repeated exposure to vocabulary, strengthening long-term memory. One important mistake many learners make is trying to learn too many words at once. Research suggests that learning 5 to 10 high-quality words each day is more effective than attempting to memorize 50 words without proper review. Consistency is much more valuable than quantity. Finally, remember that forgetting is a natural part of learning. Every time you forget a word and then successfully remember it during review, your memory actually becomes stronger. Rather than feeling discouraged, treat forgetting as an opportunity to reinforce learning through repetition and practice. In conclusion, remembering English vocabulary becomes much easier when you use scientifically proven learning techniques. Methods such as spaced repetition, active recall, contextual learning, visual association, storytelling, chunking, writing by hand, teaching others, reading regularly, speaking frequently, and getting enough sleep all help transfer vocabulary into long-term memory. By applying these strategies consistently, you'll not only remember more words but also use them naturally in your speaking and writing. If you found these scientific vocabulary tips helpful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more English vocabulary lessons, memory techniques, study hacks, and language learning strategies. Comment below with the memory technique you're excited to try first, and use one new English word in a sentence. Keep learning, keep practicing, and I'll see you in the next lesson.